There is a point on the planet where a narrow shipping lane sustains a vital part of the global economy. A passage surrounded by military tensions, geopolitical disputes, and interests that move trillions of dollars every year. This place is the Strait of Hormuz. About 1/5 of all the oil consumed in the world passes through there. A continuous flow that keeps industries running, supplies cities, and sustains the pace of the global economy. But there's a problem. That corridor, in some stretches, is narrow enough to trigger a global domino effect. A damaged ship, a military escalation, a strategic blockade, and in a matter of hours, the effect spreads across the planet. Prices skyrocket, supply chains freeze, markets go on alert. And in the face of this fragility, an inevitable question arises. If Hormuz shuts down, who can keep the world's energy flowing? Stay with us for the next few minutes and find out which countries really have a plan to escape one of the biggest bottlenecks in the global economy. To measure the scale of this problem, you need to know where it happens. The Strait of Hormuz is located in the Middle East, between the coast of Iran to the north and the Arabian Peninsula to the south. This region includes countries like Oman and the United Arab Emirates. This passageway, in practice, serves as the only maritime exit from the Persian Gulf to international waters, connecting one of the world's richest oil regions to the rest of the planet. It is through this corridor that about 20 million barrels of oil pass every day, in addition to a significant portion of liquefied natural gas, LNG, exported globally. This overflows. It turns the passage into a physical and strategic bottleneck. And that's an even more critical detail. Even after decades of investment, no route has managed to replace Hormuz. Today, there is only a limited set of alternatives. Some are operational, others are under development, and some are still just ideas. That's why we've listed 6 different routes trying to solve the same problem. But if there are so many options, why hasn't any of them managed to replace the strait as the main route? The concern about the Strait of Hormuz is not recent. Over the past decades, the corridor has seen both direct and indirect conflicts, including the so-called tanker war in the 1980s, when ships became strategic targets amid a conflict between Iran and Iraq. Since then, tensions have repeatedly resurfaced. Seizures of vessels, attacks on energy infrastructure, threats of blockade, and constant diplomatic crises reinforce an uncomfortable reality. A significant part of the global economy depends on a single vulnerable point. And when that point is at risk, as is happening in the current disputes between Iran and the United States, the impact is immediate. Oil prices rise, supply chains suffer, and entire countries need to react quickly to avoid shortages and logistical collapse. In fact, it was precisely this history that led some countries to take action. Saudi Arabia invested in an oil pipeline that crosses the country to the Red Sea. The United Arab Emirates created a direct route to Fujairah, outside the Persian Gulf. Iraq planned new land connections. But there's an important detail. None of these solutions was designed to completely replace Hormuz. They were designed with a more pragmatic goal to reduce the risk. And that raises an even more interesting question. If none of these solutions solves the problem on its own, which of these alternatives actually work? And which ones remain just on paper? To better understand who really has a plan to escape dependence on Hormuz, it's necessary to separate the initiatives into 3 clear categories: what already works, what is evolving, and what still belongs to the realm of hypotheses. Starting with what is operational, Saudi Arabia currently has the most robust alternative available. This is an east-west pipeline, also known as Petroline. The pipeline crosses the country for about 1,200 kilometers, connecting the oil fields of the Gulf to the port of Yanbu on the Red Sea. With a capacity of up to about 7 million barrels per day, this infrastructure allows oil to be exported without passing through Hormuz. In practice, it is the most solid alternative currently in operation. Alone, this volume represents more than a third of all the oil that normally passes through the strait daily. In other words, even though it is the most robust solution available, it still wouldn't be enough to replace the total flow through the strait. The United Arab Emirates adopted a similar solution, but on a smaller scale. This is the case with the Abu Dhabi crude oil pipeline, or the Habshan Fujairah oil pipeline. The pipeline, which connects the Abu Dhabi fields to the port of Fujairah, is about 406 kilometers long, with a capacity between 1.5 and 1.8 million barrels per day. The main advantage of this project is the strategic location of the export terminal, already outside the Persian Gulf, allowing direct access to the ocean without passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Adding the Petroline and Abu Dhabi pipeline, the combined capacity is between 8.5 and 9 million barrels per day, still much lower than the approximately 20 million that cross the strait daily. And it is precisely this difference that explains why the search for other solutions continues. Iran itself developed the Geographic project, aiming to transport oil to the Gulf of Oman. It is a pipeline with a projected capacity of nearly 1 billion barrels per day, but it still operates in a limited way and has not established itself as a main route. Iraq, on the other hand, presents a classic case of a stalled strategic project. The proposal for a pipeline connecting Basra to the port of Aqaba in Jordan calls for about 1,150 kilometers in length and a capacity of nearly 1 billion barrels per day. The estimated cost could exceed $20 billion. Despite all its potential, the project has faced obstacles for decades, including security issues, financing, and political stability in the region. In addition, there are complementary proposals that aim to further diversify the system. Ports like Duqm and Salalah in Oman are being developed as logistics hubs capable of receiving cargo and redistributing it outside the Persian Gulf. These solutions do not eliminate the dependence on Hormuz, but they help create redundancy in the system. Finally, we come to the realm of hypotheses. The most emblematic case is that of the Musandam Peninsula. On the map, the idea seems simple: to create a passage that connects the Persian Gulf directly to the open ocean, completely bypassing the strait. However, the reality is different. Formed by rocky mountains, extremely resistant with rugged terrain and severe geological challenges, any attempt to create a navigable canal would require massive excavations, continuous structural stability, and costs potentially comparable to the largest engineering projects ever undertaken. Without an exclusive project, without a timeline, and without confirmed feasibility, Musandam remains a technical and physical hypothesis, but far from reality. And this division makes something clear. The world is not building a single solution to replace the Strait of Hormuz. It is building a system of alternatives, incomplete, fragmented, and still insufficient, to take the lead in the global energy flow. Comparing these options is like putting projects of completely different scales side by side. And in this case, the numbers help tell the story, starting with capacity. The Petroline, with approximately 1,200 kilometers in length, can transport up to 7 million barrels per day. The Abu Dhabi pipeline, with approximately 406 kilometers, operates in the range of 1.5 to 1.8 million barrels per day. Combined, these two projects reach something close to 9 million barrels per day. Even so, that number represents only 45% of the approximately 20 million barrels that pass through the Strait of Hormuz daily. Now, when we look at costs, the scale changes even more. Projects like Basra Aqaba can exceed $20 billion, or exactly 100 billion Rs, at the exchange rate of the US currency at the close of this video. To give you an idea, with that amount, it would be possible to build approximately 100 kilometers of the Line 4 yellow subway in São Paulo, considering average costs of 1 billion Rs per kilometer. This represents an impressive 90.2% of the subway network in the metropolitan region of São Paulo. With the estimated cost of building Basra Aqaba, it would be possible to buy more than 1.3 million brand new economy cars, each costing 75,000 reais. In the case of hypothetical projects like Mochantão, the costs could easily exceed tens or even hundreds of billions of dollars, putting it in the same category as works like the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal. In terms of length, there are also significant differences. While the Petroline crosses all of Saudi Arabia with more than 1,000 kilometers, the Abu Dhabi pipeline solves the problem in less than 500 kilometers. Basra Aqaba would require crossing multiple sensitive geopolitical regions. In the end, the comparison shows that there is no dominant solution. There is a delicate balance between capacity, cost, feasibility, and risk. The future of routes bypassing Hormuz points to a scenario of redundancy, not replacement. Even with multiple projects in operation or development, the total volume available outside the strait still represents only a fraction of the volume that passes through it daily. In other words, in practice, the world will continue to depend on Hormuz in the short and medium term. But there is an even more critical and less flexible factor: liquefied natural gas, or LNG. While the Petroline still relies on partial land routes, LNG from Qatar follows a different logic. It supplies a significant portion of the planet and depends almost exclusively on maritime routes that pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Therefore, there is currently no equivalent infrastructure on the same scale capable of diverting this flow on a large scale. And that completely changes the game. After all, if the Petroline can be partially redirected, the gas, in many cases, simply stops arriving. In this context, investing in alternative infrastructure doesn't eliminate the risk, it just reduces the impact, and most importantly, buys some time. By creating complementary routes, countries are able to keep part of the flow active, increase logistical predictability, and avoid immediate collapses in crisis scenarios. In the end, the question isn't who can replace the Strait of Hormuz, it's who can operate in spite of it. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates show that real alternatives already exist. Other countries are trying to reach that level, and some ideas still remain hypothetical. But none of them solves the problem alone, because in the global energy game, the winner isn't the one with the most ambitious plan, but the one with a plan that works when everything goes wrong. Thank you for watching this video up to this point. What do you think about these alternatives we've pointed out? Of course, as I mentioned, some are still hypothetical while others are already in operation. But none of them is yet able to completely solve the Strait of Hormuz issue. Do you think there could be an alternative besides these? Leave your opinion in the comments. Let's discuss your ideas. That's all for now. Take care and see you in the next video.